Hello aspirants and welcome again to Legacy IAS Academy. In this particular session, we will be continuing with our current affairs revision series for Indian economy. February 2025 is the month that we will be focusing in this session. Now, in February 2025, what happened is, of course, the budget was released, plus the economic survey which gets released on the eve of the budget will also take that into consideration in this month's current affairs revision class. So first things first, let's get started with respect to the economic survey. Let's see what all we will be covering in this session. So with respect to the economic survey, we will be taking into account certain new concepts which were highlighted, which are highlighted by the economic survey. See, economic survey is a beautiful document which tells you about what has happened in the previous fiscal, and almost every year economic survey comes up with new concepts or new things, introduces with new phrases and concepts going forward. So we'll see what those are. We'll have a look at systematic deregulation. What does this mean? Then geo-economic fragmentation. Then middle stand concept for India's MSME sector. What is this middle stand? We'll see that as well. And risk-based regulation. What is meant by risk-based regulation? Then we'll move on to the budget and have a look at budget. And in that, we'll first see the new tax slabs that has come in the personal income tax, plus the revision in the classification criteria for MSMEs. How were the MSMEs classified so far? Now, how will the MSMEs be classified? On what criteria? Based on what criteria? Then there is the establishment of Makhana board in Bihar that the government has talked about. The government has talked about introducing many new destinations in the Udan scheme, that is Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik. And then the budget every single year comes with two pictorials or two pictographs which talks about where the rupee comes from. That means what are the sources of generation of revenue for the government, and where the rupee goes to, or where the expenditure is going to happen. So you don't have to remember the exact percentages here, but at least you should know which is the highest or the top two in that. Having said that, then we move away from the budget and economic survey and look at various other news that were there in February. That is the household consumption expenditure survey, then surveillance capital time use survey, as well as Jevon's paradox. So this is what we will be looking at in depth. So this is all a part of the current affairs compilation series that we have already started since February 2021. It is absolutely beneficial for prelims 2025 aspirants. It will cover all the important topics of every subject along with the brief content which will also be provided. Now, once the prelims is done, of course, mains is not much far. You get approximately 3 months for that. So for improving your mains answer writing, we have the intensive mains practice and content training, that is Impact 2025, in which you will be getting comprehensive answer writing practice along with content enrichment sessions. And the most important thing is the personalized feedback and mentorship, which is present for all the GS papers, essay, in over 50 hours of sessions which will be live. So having said that, let's now move on to the news for February 2025 with respect to Indian economy. So the first thing that we will see here is systematic deregulation. Now, what is systematic deregulation? See, it is made up of two words. So if, let's say, you do not know the exact concept also, at times with the help of the use of the meaning of that English word, you can identify that what that will be. So first understand regulation. Regulation. Who regulates? Basically, it's the government that regulates either directly or through any particular body. So when you talk about deregulation, you are basically talking about reduction in the regulation which is present. That means reduction in the involvement of the government. So in deregulation, it is pretty clear that we are talking about reduced amount of interference, or no, interference may not be the word, but reduced amount of involvement of the government in economy, for example. And that deregulation needs to be systematic. What do we mean by systematic? In a transitional manner. It cannot be abrupt, because it will then create a void, a vacuum, which may not be ideal, for example. So it needs to be systematic deregulation, slowly and steadily in a transitional manner. You need to deregulate. So how do you go about it? See, you cannot deregulate altogether at once. When you are deregulating, it has a system to it. It has to be in a systematic manner. Means what? First you identify the areas where deregulation can happen right away, some areas wherein it may be difficult or maybe not done, so on and so forth, and some areas in which it can be done in the near future. So the very first step here is to identify the areas for deregulation. Now when you identify, then you compare those regulations with other states and countries. So this is a very good step which you should do, is compare it or take learning from other countries as well, as to what they have done in which sector and what has been the outcome, which helps you take your own decision. Once you do that, then estimate the cost of regulation on enterprises. Then if you keep on estimating what will be the outcome, if you deregulate, what it will be. So after all those analysis, you basically deregulate, and that was what the government is also trying to do. In fact, the finance minister or the economic survey itself mentions about government should be getting out of the way and let businesses thrive. That means the government should not be involved, just get out of it and let the business take care of its own self, so as to mentioning about deregulation. So economic survey has mentioned about deregulation, and what kind of deregulation? It is the systematic deregulation that we are talking about, which will have all these steps involved. Then next is the geo-economic fragmentation. Now what is this geo-economic fragmentation? Geo-economic fragmentation is sort of opposite to the global integration that is there. So global economic integration, it is there. Now what is global economic integration? Global economic integration means the economies or the countries of the world are integrated because they are trading more and more with each other. So more and more integration is happening. Now when you talk about geo-economic fragmentation, in this you will be doing a reverse. So what reverse it is? It has to be, of course, policy driven. Policy driven means you cannot do it randomly, haphazardly. It needs to be policy driven. Of course, it will be top down approach coming from the government and then spreading in the businesses and the private sector. So it's a policy driven reversal of what? The global economic integration. And this policy reversal of global economic integration will be driven by strategic consideration. I hope this is absolutely clear. What do you mean by that? So let's say there is a country is, let's say, integrated with respect to 100 other countries globally with respect to trade and all. So what you will do is you will have a policy in which you will step back, reverse this integration. So what will happen? Now earlier with 100 different countries, this 100 number is going to go down to, let's say, 40, and this reduction needs to be policy driven. At the same time, which 40 countries will remain, which is strategically important for a particular country. Whichever 40 countries are strategically important with them, the others can go away, in the sense that with others you reduce the integration that was there. So countries forming trade and financial partnership, this trade and financial partnership will be formed with respect to these 40 countries, and this trade and financial partnership will be based not solely on the market demand, supply and cost efficiency, but on geopolitical alignments. Means what? Means, for example, capitalist countries trying to deal more with each other, or let's say communist countries trying to deal more with each other as compared to dealing with other capitalist countries, so on and so forth. So here sort of de-integration at a global level is happening. You are integrating less and less and less. You are reducing the number of countries you are integrating with, and the number of countries or the countries that you are integrated with will be based on your geopolitical alignment. That is what is known as geo-economic fragmentation. Fragmentation means breaking down into pieces. So the global integration is fragmenting over here. Now the third concept that we are going to discuss here is, it stands concept for India's MSME sector. India's MSME sector basically, or the SME sector. Now in this, the concept is this middle land that we are talking about is in Germany. So we are taking the best practices of middle land of Germany and trying to impose that particular thing in India, so much so that we have come up with the concept of make in India middle stand. So use the concept of middle stand in India to make in India through the SME. It advocates creating robust SME sector similar to that of Germany's Mittelstand. So we are trying to progress on that regard. Now, why this is important? Question like what is Mittelstand or what is Make in India Mittelstand can be asked directly in the examination. It of course fosters innovation, competitiveness, and economic growth through deregulation and policy support. So here also the government is coming up with the concept of deregulation, means the government is coming up with initiative, but at the same time its involvement in the implementation will be quite minimal, so that the businesses can go ahead and do wonders and the government gets out of the way of businesses. Next is risk-based regulation. Now, what is this concept of risk-based regulation? See, presently what happens is, if there is a regulation on a particular entity or a particular thing, that regulation is like a blanket thing which is present for all that particular organization, for all the things, for every single one. But that should not be the case. Why? Because different entities can deal with those kind of things in a different manner, with different amount of risk, different amount of hazards, different probability of succeeding. So here the government is talking about